I think we can probably start. We're at 9:46 according to my clock. So Cynthia, would you do the honors?
Yeah, I'd love to. First, I'll just introduce myself since we haven't seen each other in person in almost a year. I'm Cynthia Carew, a member at Bethel and member of the Creation Care team. And I am so pleased to see all of you here. And I'm pleased to introduce our speaker, Rod Fisher. After growing up as a farm boy and studying engineering at Iowa State University, Rod served on the faculty at the University of Washington, researching and teaching chemical and bioprocessing engineering, and then spent 18 years managing technology for new businesses at Cargill. Most recently, he had 11 wonderful years teaching high school science and coaching robotics. Rod's retirement career is to address climate change with practical and bipartisan solutions. So, among other things, he joined Citizens Climate Lobby to help exert local political will into the U.S. House and Senate. He loves talking about solutions for climate change to anyone. He has lived in Eden Prairie for 30 years with his wife, Nancy, raising kids, grandkids, honeybees, and citizen involvement. So happy to welcome you, Rod.
Thank you, Cynthia.
Thank you.
And Barb, thanks for hosting. I'm really happy to be here this morning. You guys are living my dream. I always dreamed of living in a little college town and being around a bunch of active people. So there you are. Okay, just a little logistics. I'm going to present, I hope not too much, but the main topic is to get into this model, which is in the description. And so I'm going to give a little introduction to get to that model. And then with that model, we can play with the dynamics of the climate. That's most of what this is about this morning. It's quite fun. It's interactive, but I want it to be also not just one way along the way. I'll present. If you have a question that's like just quick clarification, go ahead and interrupt me. Just open up your mic. If you have a longer question, you can chat it. Barb's going to watch the chat and we'll get those, or just ask it at the end. If it's kind of, especially if it's in a different direction than where I'm going, because this topic often raises lots of interesting questions. So with that, I'm going to start sharing a screen. It looks like this. Look at this. Here's your whole series, but we don't need that. So I want to talk about solving climate change problems. And I used to, when I started talking about climate, and I retired early so I could talk about climate and so I could help address it. And that was mostly motivated because I really, really believe that Americans need to think hard about this problem and that we weren't thinking hard enough and we weren't getting good information about it. So I said, okay, I'll go out there and help. So I thought, wow, I'm a scientist, I'm an educator. Certainly all people need to do is hear more facts and they'll be convinced. And then I learned, no, this is really not about facts, it's about persuasion. And it's about what do people believe now and why and how can their opinions and outlook be changed. So I've earned my second PhD practically the hard way in how human psychology works and doesn't work. And so that's kind of where I am today. So this happens to be a picture. Everybody can see this, right? Barb, we're on board?
Yes.
Okay, good. This happens to be a picture of my local chapter plus a few other local chapters of CCL, my group, Citizens Climate Lobby, with Dean Phillips, our US rep, and we're lobbying him. And we pulled him into a meeting and he presented and we presented. And so that's what we do. And I'll talk about that later. First, I should tell you where I come from. I like to stand in the woods, but that's actually a lot of the slides for this talk I modified because I spoke to a local chapter of master naturalists. So I threw in a lot of nature pictures to impress them. But I'm here because I want to build a secure future for the planet, for children, for nature, for everybody, especially for the people who don't have a voice. We have a loud voice, you and me. We are disproportionately loud and powerful if we choose to be, because we're, as far as I can tell, white, probably well off, in a state and a country where your voice is loudly heard and listened to. So we have a loud voice. So I'm trying to convince people like you and others to raise that voice. So like you heard from Cynthia, I come from Iowa. I did a lot of science. I've got a couple grandkids, and I like dragonflies. Here's the master naturalist part again. So besides these things to me that matter, what also matters is, of course, all future generations, not only kids, but here in Minnesota, our lakes, our woods, our ag, our fields, and the things that matter are the things that are going to affect that, which is, of course, storms and droughts and fires and floods. So we need to get through this disaster scenario of climate, which is true and it's real, but we can't hang on it because it won't get us to the end point. We got to find the end point. These are solar panels. These are, of course, wind turbines. This is an electric car. So there is a way forward, and we have to get there. There's just no way about it. The good news is we can get there, and it will be a great future. So I'm not going to talk much about the downside of climate for us, either in Minnesota or the world, because I think if you don't know it by now, it's easy to find. It's in the news every single day. So I don't need to talk about that, except to say we got trouble. And that trouble is already starting, and it's going to get really intense. But because we're humans, we have vision that looks out about 3 years. You know, we can look out a little bit. We can't look out 20, 30, 50 years. And so we have to trust the people that have done that, and they do that with science and modeling, et cetera. So there's a lot going to happen. I like this slide, though, as a set the scene. This is the Earth's atmosphere over here, sitting on the globe, right-sized. This is the proper size of our entire atmosphere if it were one ball. Now you spread that over the whole globe, and it would be about this thick. Okay, you see that thin layer, and 80% of the mass of that atmosphere is in the bottom few miles. So this is about 100 miles of glowing atmosphere in a sunset, but think of only a tenth or less of that as the real stuff. It's thinner than a coat of paint on, if that were a bowling ball or something. And then this is all the water on the Earth, all of it, ice, fresh water, everything balled into one. It's not much. This atmosphere is the thing that we're having an effect on, and it has an effect on that water. And those effects are, of course, we warm the atmosphere, and that's what we're going to be trying to solve. And that has all these effects, weather, snowpack, drought, but mostly it warms the ocean. And the ocean warming then has all these effects, including sea levels and ice and hurricanes and weather. Every 1 degree C increase in the atmosphere pumps 7% more moisture into the air. And that means, that doesn't just mean 7% more rain, it means a lot more storms, because our our atmosphere is so balanced. So the main thing we try to stress in our organization is that we need to talk. And Americans have not done a very thorough job of raising this issue. Sadly, that's partly because we've been properly trained that this is a very touchy issue. It's too partisan, it's too hot, and it defines who you are. If you're pro-climate, you're one person. If you're anti-climate or whatever, you're another person. And we have to get past that. And the easiest thing to do is to talk about climate without getting into particular camps. So 70% of Americans, by good polls, understand that climate is changing and it will harm us. And yet 2/3 say they never talk about it. And that's what our job is to change. So we need to make it part of our conversation. Now, the way I want to talk about it with you is talking about solutions. Okay, like I said, I spent part of my time talking about problems, about the disaster scenario. And you know, people left my talks with their shoulders down, feeling kind of bummed out. Well, that's not a way to motivate people to do anything. So the way to motivate is to talk about the future as a positive, achievable, and really good for everybody solution. And it will not cost us more money, which has been drummed into our heads, but it's not true. So we want to talk less about this. This is business as usual by 2100, 6.4 F or 3 degrees C. This is a rising average global temperature, okay? I hope you've heard this, or sorry, 3.6 degrees C. I hope you've heard numbers like that, because this is the number that we want to talk about and we want to put in our heads is 2 degrees C, which happens to be 3.6 F by 2100. This is what we need to shoot for. And how powerful, with that, how powerful our new economy will also be when we get there. Because this is going to take a new economy, and this is the theme of the whole movement ultimately, is we have to get away from fossil carbon. We have to get away from digging stuff out of the ground and burning it and using that to power our economy. We definitely need energy. We just got to quit using fossil carbon energy. So how can we talk about it? Is we can talk about the reality of the dynamics. By that, I mean, how does this system behave and what can we do to change it? And so I'm an engineer, and I have to be careful because engineers, scientists, we grow up through school thinking about describing things with models. Model is simply, I have an equation that can help describe this stuff, you know, the equation of the laws of gravity and the equations that describe how fast things fall. Those are models. Well, the more complex the system, the more complex the model. But again, technical people have figured out you can add those complexities to the model and actually understand them. Now you get a model every day when you look at the Weather Channel. There's a model out of Europe and one out of the US running global weather patterns on a supercomputer somewhere. And it's telling you hour by hour, region by region weather. That's a model. You can also have models in your car telling you when to slow down as you're using the cruise control. So there are models. Your doctor uses a model when he's diagnosing a bunch of symptoms that he's picked off of your blood, and he plugs it in. You know, you think the doctors are like Marcus Welby. No, they plug it in, and they have software that tells them it looks like you have an issue with your kidneys. So models are absolutely everywhere behind the scenes, including in the climate world. And whenever these climate scientists say, this will have this effect, they're using a model. So I'm going to show you one model, which is a good one, and we can play with it. How does the model work? Well, we know that the greenhouse gases are the things that warm the atmosphere. Greenhouse effect. Sunlight comes in. Some of that energy normally bounces back to space. The more greenhouse gases, less of it bounces back to space. Those greenhouse gases are carbon dioxide, methane, fluorine gases. There are some of them listed down here. Where do those gases come from? Well, most of them come from burning fossil fuel, okay, CO2. Of course, there's normal CO2 cycle, which is very natural. It's been going on for billions of years. We're just tweaking that, and we're tweaking it in a significantly fast way. So energy from CO2 comes in. Land use actually contributes a lot to CO2 emissions. There's ways to do CO2 removal, some of them natural, like plant a tree, grow crops, grow topsoil. So CO2 removal pulls it out, and then other greenhouse gases push it in. So if you had a model that would add these up as they are contributed by these factors, you could just do the math. And then you would have a model that says, if the greenhouse gases go up by this %, it would raise temperature by this much. That number is known. Then, if the temperature goes up in the atmosphere, what would that do for impacts like floods, hurricanes, ocean temps, fisheries? Those numbers are known. So every one of these little blue arrows represents known things. The model I'm going to show you comes out of Climate Interactive. It's a group in MIT Sloan School. And their job they took as, let's write a model that not only is good and accurate, but it's usable by people like you and me. And so that's the model I'm going to show you. It's this model is about a year old now that it's been released, but it's really taking off among people like me that like to talk about climate. The model's called En-ROADS, Energy Rapid Overview Decision Support. That doesn't matter. You don't have to memorize that. It's a global model. It looks at the whole globe in one lump. So it can't tell you what Minnesota is going to do. It can't tell you what North America is going to do. It can tell you what the globe will do, and then we can infer from that. But let's just accept for now that we're interested in the whole globe, right? Not just Minnesota. So it's a global model. It calculates how energy, economics, and regulatory choices affect gases and outcomes. And then it calculates the results from this period for 110 years, from 1990 to 2100. And here's some geek talk. It's high order nonlinear differential equation, 14,000 equations, blah, blah, blah. If I looked at this model in a little more detail, then I would start to see some of the pieces I'm going to show you. It's got energy demand. How do we power the economy of the world? It's got energy supply. Where does that come from? It's got economic drivers. It's got CO2 emissions from that. Those emissions have impacts, just like I showed you on the other plant. Then if I showed you even more detail, I'd get into 100 pages, literally 100 pages of this. Don't read it. Every one of these arrows represents an equation. And that's how we get to 14,000 equations. Now, lucky for us, laptops are pretty fast these days. So I can run this whole model, and so can you, on a laptop. And that's what we're going to do now. So I'm going to switch over, and we're going to use this model. Barb, would you give me 10-minute warning too?
Sure.
At the end. Thank you. Okay. That's the wait a minute. Here it is. All right. Now I am showing you the front page of this model, and believe me, I've looked at some other models. Some of them I can't even get because they're running only on giant computers. But This is the most simple to use, and it's meant to be. It's meant to be that people like you and me can play with this and get an idea. So I'm going to guide you through a workshop of using this model and trying to save the world. Right now, the world is looking at 3.6 degrees by 2100. And we have to get that down to 2. All right, so there's the goal. Now, what does this thing do? I have to give you a little introduction. This model will let us tweak energy supply over here. Let us affect transportation and building and industry sectors, both in terms of energy efficiency and electrification. It'll even let us play with growth, economic growth, population growth. It'll let us tweak land and industry emissions like deforestation, methane, which comes from farming and industrial use. And it'll even let us throw in ideas about carbon removal, which is, like I said, grow trees, and there's a bunch of technological ways. So these are the sliders. See, I can slide these things and they'll have an effect. When I slide this thing, I just killed coal, or at least I highly taxed it, and it had a small effect. So we'll get to that. What this graph, and I could show you, I'm showing you the cover of a model that I could go down 15 layers. And we'll look at some of those, but mostly I just want to play with the top. What this graph shows is where does the energy come from that drives the global economy. So here's energy per year. This is year. And the energy is coal, oil, natural gas, renewables, fuel, hydro, dams, etc. Fuel, I mean biofuel, and of course solar and wind. Bioenergy, oh sorry, this would include ethanol from corn and stuff like that. Things where you grow something biologically, turn it into energy, nuclear, etc. So here's where energy will come from in the next 80 years, unless we do something different. Notice the growth of coal, notice the growth of oil. Why are these growing? Because worldwide, people need more energy. They want more energy, and as their countries develop, they're going to get more energy, and they're going to get it in the cheapest way they can, unless we change that. This chart on the right shows where the greenhouse gases are coming from throughout the century. So this is carbon, this big black smoggy thing. Carbon from CO2 from burning fossil fuel mostly. A little bit of fluorine gases, but methane. So I'm going to focus mostly on CO2 and methane here. And we'll watch those. So our job, now you are introduced to a very powerful model. And our job is to save the world. So now it's the participatory part of the morning where you tell me something you'd like to do. You'll just look at these sliders if you don't have any other ideas and say, let's go after or let's add one of those things. So you can't, there's no wrong answers. Let's see what we can do. This has to get down to 2 degrees C, and we probably have about 15 minutes.
Yes.
Rod,
You'll have to unmute in order to contribute.
Yep, go, go, go. Let's hear something.
what is new zero carbon?
Good. Okay, so new zero carbon is new unknown sources of electricity that don't emit greenhouse gas. That would include, and so it mentions nuclear fusion, thorium-based nuclear fission. These are major breakthroughs. But since you mention it, let's do something down there. People who are technically optimistic, let's have a breakthrough in zero carbon. Okay, what is a breakthrough? That means suddenly we can have nuclear fission that people are willing to build. So what does that do? It really cuts back on some of the fossil energy, and it cuts back on some of the CO2. So we'll leave that.
Rod?
Yes.
Noel Stratton. What is the impact? What's the fossil footprint of solar cells? Is it zero yet?
The footprint. Well, you mean, well, first off, let's see what would happen if we just increase. So this renewables here isn't solar, geothermal, and we could break down and go directly into each one of them, but we won't. So it costs energy and money and some environmental things to build a solar cell. Maybe if that's what you're talking about, Noel.
Yes. That's the question.
But the net payback for the environment, both in terms of carbon, is very positive over the life, because these are 30-year life devices.
Right.
And they haven't yet industrialized, but they're talking about ways to recycle the glass, the metals, etc., when those start coming offline.
Okay.
Let's add some renewables since Noel mentioned it.
I have a question. This doesn't include the impacts of the life cycle of the change that you're making.
It does.
It does.
It
So
does.
what that you're saying is that when you make a solar panel, you're taking it from cradle to grave, all the way around, and
Yes.
having the impact of the rare earth metals, everything when you get into electrical vehicles.
Well, the climate impact, yes, Eddie, because the climate impact is accounted for up through 2100, and that's certainly the carbon of building a solar panel, et cetera. But it doesn't say, it doesn't add, there's nothing on here to say what's going to happen to those heavy metals and how will that be detrimental to, because it doesn't account for the environmental. We have to also have the knowledge and the wisdom to not just build solar cells and then dump them in the ocean, you know, when they're dead. Yeah.
And that's important because you look at nuclear and it's so appealing, but there's one more discussion about it that's not.
Great. So you mentioned nuclear. I'm going to take that as a clue to look at. This is old nuclear. Old nuclear is the current plants, giant, really expensive
reactors, big
reactors. Nobody wants to build them, but look what happens if we highly subsidize nuclear today. Highly subsidize, which means basically make the electricity free. Look what happened to carbon. I'm flipping it back and forth now. Nothing.
I can't tell which one is.
Barely, because nobody wants to build a new nuclear plant. But if we come back here to new zero carbon, which includes some of these smaller nuclear plants, it does have more of an effect, but it's not huge. But it is something. So that's why I wanted to compare that. I'm actually a fan of keeping our current nuclear plants running, but not building new ones, at least these old ones. So just to put that on the table. But let's have another one. Somebody jump in. We need.
I have a question.
Yes.
What about
Say it again.
What about if we try to really increase renewables?
Yes, by subsidizing. How do you want to increase it?
Whatever.
Yeah, so that's what I did over here. When I flipped this switch, I was highly subsidizing renewables, and we can go inside and see what that means. But it basically means let's put a lot of public money into, you know, making it worthwhile to build solar and wind and things like that. Okay, but that had an effect.
I'd like to see how, let's tax coal.
Okay, good. Now you're getting at it. Who said that?
Jill Fisher.
Thank you.
With no C.
My cousin Jill. So Jill is starting to say, wait a minute, look at all that carbon over there. So highly taxed coal, boom. Now look at coal again on this energy side. Coal is by almost a factor 2 the dirtiest energy out there for carbon. So yes,
I thought
Coal
coal
and-
was clean, really, really clean.
No, I don't know who you're listening to, but it's not. If you're
That's with
listening
the
to a
wink,
coal
winky
state
face.
senator, they'll tell you that. And in the US, coal is effectively dead. It's, but worldwide, there's literally millions of tons of coal sitting in the ground for Brazil, China, India to dig up and burn. So coal is a big deal. If we said the same thing, so look what coal did. There's another 1/10 of a degree. Everything matters here. If we looked at oil, same. Okay, we're pulling down that CO2.
Now
And,
our houses are being toastily heated by natural gas. I'm
That's
concerned
right.
about
That's
what
right.
happens
That's
when
right.
we take that away or
Right.
tax it.
Right. So thank you. So these things will impact renewables. What happened to renewables? We had that jumped up there once already. Somebody else, some idea. Look over here. You got all these ways to improve the world that don't affect energy. What do you want to do?
Well, GE just announced they're going all electric.
General Motors, yeah.
I mean,
Yeah,
sorry.
all electric transport. Let's do that. Watch this. Boom.
Whoa.
Now, highly incentivized electrification of transport. And that General Motors announcement is huge. It really is. Barb, how much time do we have left?
What about carbon offsets?
You have about, well, we're about 2 minutes to 10 minutes out, Rod.
Okay. So I'm going to jump us a little quicker here on this model.
Deforestation.
Yeah, right. Okay. You want to build trees. You want to stop cutting down trees. Okay. These are things that people have been talking about. This is the low hanging fruit, energy efficiency. And these don't cost, these have like 3 to 5 year paybacks.
Look at that.
Both on buildings and on cars and transportation. Okay, so we are almost there. What if we, the other big thing, notice we've really, sorry, we've done a good job on CO2, but not on methane. We need to go work on methane. Okay, so we're almost there, and we can talk about some of the methane waste, but this is industrial waste and farm product waste. So I'm going to say you almost got there, and I'm going to give you a buy on saving the world. But I'm going to now show you, look at all the things that have been done, especially on the energy side. I'm going to go back to start, and I'm going to show you what happens on carbon if we play with carbon pricing. Pricing carbon is an idea that says we're going to add a tax for every ton of CO2 that's released by a fuel. And so I'm going to build a tax that is actually before the US Congress right now. $15 per ton, which would raise the price of gasoline 15 cents a gallon. All right, that's the relative for the first year, 15 cents. That's the first year. We're going to start 2025. That takes a year to get there. I'm just building a bill. If I add $10 per year for the rest of the century, then I get up to $765 because it's 75 years plus the 15. And that's going to start 2026, okay?
Wow.
And it takes 75 years to get there. This is a carbon price bill. It's a steadily rising price on carbon. It's a kind of thing that economists love and financial planners love, financial executives, financial investors, because it's predictable. And now look what it did. It took us from here to here in one step. It is by far the biggest hammer on the whole toolbox. And this is why I'm going to talk about this for the next couple minutes, because this is what happens when you price carbon. Now, with that pricing and a little bit of work on methane and a little bit of work on efficiency, we can get there. It's just amazing. But look what happened when we priced to the use of fossil energy. Again, we're going from here to here. You price carbon as it comes out of the ground, and fossil energy is really diminished. So let me just wrap up by showing you a couple more slides here. Okay, so we've saved the world if we actually do it. And the way to do it is taking action. The action I talk about, and this is our economy today, you know, the last 150 years, we powered our economy with fossil. It's time to stop doing that. We can do it with a new economy, and the new economy has to come from something else. And I won't talk about high school or college economics, but I will talk about what my group is trying to do. And my group is called Citizens Climate Lobby, and we have one purpose in mind. This is why I love it. We work on one thing, putting a price on carbon and lobbying the US Congress to make it happen, because this has to be a national policy. And then our contribution as part of a world community will help make it a world policy. Actually, and we're dragging our feet because Europe, Canada, about 60 countries are already ahead of us on this. You may not have heard of that, but Europe is switching to this idea. So we have to build a way to control pollution carbon. The way is to put a price on it. We have a bill. The bill is in Congress these last 2 years. Last year, of course, not much went forward with any kind of climate policy, but this year it can. And our target is right here in this picture. It's our legislators in Washington, all of them. So let me tell you about that bill, because my goal is to try to get you to endorse it, to buy into it. What do? You put a fee on carbon fuel as it comes out of the ground, either a mine or a well, all right? There aren't that many, and the government already counts those numbers, so they just have to go out and say, okay, you pulled out this many metric tons of coal, here's your fee. The fee is based on how much carbon that's going to put in the atmosphere, and that's that $15 per ton of carbon as CO2. You take that money, collect it, and then you return 100% of it to households as a dividend on a per capita basis. So why is that? I would like it to be more progressive. I'd like to give it more to communities of color who have been harmed more. But this is a compromise bill. This bill has been worked out with Republicans and Democrats at the table. And the Republicans have said, just return it to households, and then it's not a tax. And they hate taxes, as you know. So that money is returned. The border has an adjustment so that other countries can't take advantage of it. There's a limited regulatory adjustment so that after a few years, it's not working strongly enough, then the regulatory step comes in. But this is how you get a compromise bill so that we can get a bipartisan bill. You say, we're going to limit the regulatory role of government, but we're going to let the economy do the work. And so this is what this bill does. It does work. 40% less carbon over 12 years, 40% over 12 years, 90% by 2050. It doesn't do it all. We never want to say one thing will do it all, but this is by far the most important thing that can happen to control carbon. It is revenue neutral. So this is the slide for conservatives in the group. It doesn't grow the government. It's good for people because it not only saves lives directly because we're less air pollution and better quality, but it also grows a powerful new economy. If we tax carbon as it comes out of the ground, we grow the new economy, which is based on renewables. And families get the money. So the families can do what they want with the money. They can either put on solar cells or buy a TV, it doesn't matter. So they are made whole, and all of the families at certainly the bottom 60% of the income spectrum are made whole. They get more back than they had to pay, because you'll have to pay more for electricity, more for gasoline, more for plastic goods, because all those companies who make those things have to buy energy. We think the best studies we can find show 2.1 million new jobs over 10 years. The net job is increase. You're going to hear lots and lots and lots of people say jobs, jobs, jobs when it comes to climate bills, because they're only looking at the jobs in their district right now and saying, we're going to lose jobs, often coal. And that's true. Those jobs are going to go away, just like what jobs went away when when this industrial revolution that we lived through came. What jobs went away? Horse buggies, horse whips, horseshoes, things to do with horses. They went away. I'm sorry, but we don't have horses anymore driving the economy. And in 50 years, we're going to say, yes, isn't it great? We don't have coal anymore. But those jobs will go away, and yet we will have more new jobs. The economists love this approach. Other countries love it. These are a whole bunch of other countries already doing it. Europe's going to have one coming in 3 years. So that's it. How do we do that? We lobby, lobby, lobby. This is us lobbying in DC, on the phone, on Zoom, everywhere. And we have town halls, etc. So I will put a link, or I'll send it to Barb. If you want to join CCL, there's actually a chapter in Northfield. They're very active. Citizens Climate Lobby. Just Google it. It's a really well-run organization. The neat thing is this model I showed you has nothing to do with CCL. They are totally independent groups. And so I've just put them together because it's win-win-win for everybody. And that's where I end up. So price carbon, if nothing else that you hear from me today, think of price carbon and carry that message forward in any way you want to.
So how do you do that?
So Rod, I should let you know, our church council has actually signed off on that.
Oh, good for you.
Yeah.
Dang, I didn't know that. I looked into your church. I didn't find that. So
Yeah,
excellent.
I think last June was when, we in our committee looked at it in many different ways and then proposed it to the church council, and we got the thumbs up. That might not be known to all committee members, but I'm kind of proud to say that.
Awesome.
You gave a really helpful description though, because I do think to a layperson, it's kind of complicated. So I really, really appreciate that. Thank you.
It is. It's complicated, and it's hard to get from that idea to an actual working practical action. And the action that we believe is get this bill passed. Now, Northfield, Angie Craig, who's,
Yep.
Yeah, you're in good shape. She's already sponsored the bill. So now, and we've got Dean Phillips, he's sponsored. So now we have to reach out and find other ways. Our senators, for instance, there's going to be a Senate bill this year. We need to reach out to them and make Amy and Tina strong supporters of carbon pricing. So.
Do you have time for one more question?
I do. I've got all morning.
I have one too.
There's an economy issue here that I'd like you to address. The value of a company frequently is the value of the coal and the oil that's in the ground.
Yeah, they're assets that they own.
And
yes.
That's what the stockholders are seeing. And if there is no value, if that then essentially it diminishes to zero because you can't pull it out of the ground, then the stock is going to go belly up and the stockholders are going to balk. And how do you address all of those conversations?
No, that's a good point. That's a good point. It doesn't, well, first off, those companies are still going to make money, but they're going to make their value is going to go down when their assets in the ground. And they're, I think, on the order of $1 trillion of owned assets, especially oil and gas sitting in the ground that the gas companies, the oil companies have. And those will be diminished. And they know that. Guess what? They are already understanding that they're going to have to walk away from a lot of valued assets. Those companies won't go belly up, so they won't go to zero as stock value, but they will be diminished, and it will take a hit on the stock market. There's no doubt about it. We have to figure out how to convert our economy, and converting an economy means walking away from some assets and means of production to new ones. And in the process, there will be diminished. So if, for instance, there are a lot of financial advisors down there saying, if you aren't managing your own retirement planning to walk away to be independent, at least somewhat independent of oil and gas, you're making a mistake, because oil and gas stocks are going to go down, even if this bill doesn't pass, because they know the future and they're investing in alternates. So, yeah, but that's real. Connie.
Yes, I'm wondering, would you speak a little bit about methane, especially related to line 3?
Oh yeah, methane, natural gas. Okay, so line 3 is a way to get some of the, actually line 3 is for, I thought it was for tar sands oil. Which is,
it produces a lot of methane though, doesn't it? When you take
that kind of tar sands mining, I don't know how bad that is in methane. I mean, the fracking and the methane natural gas out of North Dakota, out of that produces a lot of fugitive gases, and those are bad. The tar sands are bad just because they're so darn dirty. I mean, they're just hardly better than coal. And they represent dirty oil. The line 3 allows that to more cheaply be brought into the US and refined. Yeah, but it's, so I don't know what else to say about that. Line 3 won't, whether it gets shut down, and that sounds like the Biden administration is going to stop it. But that tar sands oil is still going to come out of the ground as long as it's a cheap source of energy, and it is. So we need to change it so that tar sands is more expensive. But it will come out of the ground. It'll get put on cars, train cars, and shipped to the coasts, with or without line 3.
Another question?
Yes.
I believe the oil wells in North Dakota are pretty much on the way out, because of the cost of producing oil in North Dakota is high. Is excessive, is greater than the cost of renewable fuels.
That's true. The good news is the price of world price of oil is going down, and it will go down as long as the Saudis keep it down, because they're good at managing the price. The Russians are good at managing the price, to keep other people out of it. I mean, so you could look at it geopolitically. The Saudis and the Russians drove us, into producing our own oil, and the oil boom of North Dakota is an example, and they're helping drive us back out by keeping the price down. So, but that oil is still there, that gas is still there, and it'll be mined when the price goes back up. So we want to keep that in the ground for sure.
I could just ask a question, that is, calculating the cost of switching over, does that include the cost of like switching all homes over to electric heat and what that'll cost families and such?
I'm trying to think where in the model that cost would be, so, okay, so the cost to you, a consumer of, say, let's say this bill, the carbon pricing bill, that cost will come to you because your gas and energy bills will go up. Your products that you buy will go up because they have to buy that energy, the companies. And you have to buy the energy for your home. It doesn't assume you're going to do anything to improve your home, to improve the efficiency. But the cool, and that's actually what they're working on now, because you as a homeowner, if your energy bill goes up and you're going to get a monthly bank deposit to compensate for that dividend that was collected. So you'll get money back, and it'll roughly balance, unless you have a really big home, it'll roughly balance what you had to pay in extra energy. But you're a smart guy, so you're going to say, wait a minute, our energy is pretty expensive. Why don't we, make our home more energy efficient? We could put in a better water heater, a better furnace, whatever. So you're incented to do that. You're not forced to, and you can use your dividend to do that. That's what the model is going to include, is how that incentive will improve the energy picture, but it doesn't today. So you're free to do what you want with your home, obviously, but you will be paying more for energy. And that's a guarantee, whether this bill goes through or not. Energy is going to go up. And the good news is the electrical energy probably won't. Solar, they're now talking about putting in so much solar and wind that the long-term view for electrical energy is pretty static. It depends on some technological improvements like batteries on the grid. So electrical compared to gas will look cheaper. Today it's the flip, right? It's cheaper to put in natural gas furnace, natural gas water heater, as far as your energy bill. That's going to flip. And then you'll want to have an efficient electric water heater and an efficient, possibly even electric geothermal or air thermal heat pump. But that's down the road. Long answer, sorry.
The reason I ask about it is I just checked into it recently, and there's no requirement in all new construction now. So they're still putting in natural gas heating,
yes,
and water heating. So you say, okay, looking down the road,
yes,
how does this make sense? Because we're building the problem into the future, the size of the homes, the way we do it. And then you have to go back and refit them and say, okay, what's wrong with this picture?
You are exactly right. And I don't know if anyone on here is a builder, but I'll say the building profession has been really resistant to being at the front edge. They're just resistant to change. They know how to build houses with forced air, natural gas water heaters. They know how to build apartments where you plug those little natural gas things right in the wall. And that's what they're doing. So you're exactly right. We're building in the next 25 years that we'll either retrofit or live with. Mm-hmm. That's why we should have done this 10 years ago, but we're doing it now.
Rod, are you feeling hopeful?
Oh, yes. Did you ask that, Paula?
That was me.
Yes.
Yeah. Oh. Yes, I am. Most days.
There's one thing that should be brought up, and that's regarding solar and wind and other things, is that you don't necessarily have to have those items on your house or in your property to be a strong participant in that industry.
Bravo. So go ahead, tell us how.
You can join solar farms, buy shares in solar farms, wind farms. You can invest right now in what we're talking about, the move of the energy resources to prepare for the future, so that you'll be sitting on the high side when the value of all these other things become highly more valuable. why other things like coal become less valuable.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Are you guys Excel Energy down there?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, so through Excel, you pay a little bit more per month, and they will basically use that to source wind. Through a third-party company, if you don't know about this, you do exactly what Eddie was talking about. You use your state. The state has incented you to use solar. You use that share and invest in a community solar project. We did that, and our electric bill went down, even though we bought an electric car and we're using a lot more electric in the house because I keep switching over appliances. So it's amazing. And so Excel's really, they're doing a pretty good job. We're lucky to have a company like Excel versus some of the other utility companies. So I just put in a new water heater. I think I'm going to get $700 of rebates. Plus it's more efficient. And so it'll be a pretty cheap option.
And they don't talk about the secondary effect of like solar panels. They're great insulators. You put those on your roof, your air conditioning load's going to drop dramatically.
I've not heard that. And I looked at solar for my roof, but I just didn't want the hassle, so I went to community solar.
You really don't want to do that in the middle of a life cycle of a roof. You'd like to do it at the time that you need new shingles.
Yes.
And you do that, and then you put the panels on, and you're set. Don't do it in the middle of it.
Some states, California, I assume is one of them, you have to make new roofs solar ready at construction. That's part of the new code. And so if a new owner comes in and says, I want solar, it's a very simple retrofit.
Yeah.
So that's pretty cool. Yes. I only know you by
Sorry,
Michael.
this is Nancy. So sort of circling back to CCL then, and it seems like there's so much more impact with the carbon, with pricing carbon, than anything we can do really individually. Is that what I think that's what I was seeing on the model.
It's true. And I'm glad you brought that up, Nancy, because we want to do something, most of us, and we are kind of taught that, start at home, start with the small things that we can do. But that's the fear is that that's where we stop. And we do something small like, me putting in a new water heater and say, good, I've done my thing. But again, my voice is so loud. When I go to Dean Phillips and help him convince himself that he needs to support a national policy, which will then have this much bigger effect, and it will twist the arm of the other countries in the world who, because we're still the leading economy, this is a global effect through this action. So you're exactly right. We need to not stop locally. We need to make sure this turns into a national policy. That's where things are going to happen that matter to the economy, well, actually to the climate and the economy. So we have to become political citizens.
So if you were going to then encourage us as a congregation, Bethel members, to do more, we've signed off. Though again, I would say a small group of people, know of that. And so education and encouraging our congregational members to really become politically active around that, or to be in contact with their senators and representatives. What else? Or say more, please.
Okay, so the first thing I did mention the two senators. So this year, this Congress coming soon, I think, there's going to be a bill in the Senate. And the Senate's a real tight pinch. And this bill, which I'm talking about, is not a left or right bill. There are a lot of people on the very progressive side of the world that don't like carbon pricing because it doesn't do enough fast enough. And it's true, there has to be more, but they view it as a compromise, which exactly it is. We are acknowledging that we live in a purple country. There are conservatives and there are liberals, and there are people in the middle. And so this idea is going to face an uphill climb among progressives. Tina, for instance, I don't know where she's going to fall. She's really woke on climate, but I don't know what she's going to say. So we're going to work hard with her. Amy Klobuchar as well. Notice how I'm on first name basis, just a shorthand. Senator Smith and Senator Klobuchar need influenced. They do. Your representative, Angie Craig, needs your support. So one thing you can do, we have a program through CCL where it automatically prompts you once a month to call their office. I hope you guys are doing that. But it just says, hey, time for your monthly call. And as you know, if you don't know, I'll tell you, if they get 10 calls a month on an issue, it kind of hits their radar of things that people care about. 10 calls. We want 1 call a day to each of those offices so that at the end of the day, the person tallying it up says, oh, we got 3 calls on the climate. And they tell the representative that, and they say there's something going on. So those kind of calls for support, even to people that you think are already on board, are needed. And they need to hear about a particular answer, not just, I love the climate, please help. They need you to tell them what to do. And that what we want to do, and that's why CCL is so focused on one thing, is we want you to build a pricing bill or push a pricing bill through and get it voted on. And that's it. It doesn't have to be our bill. It's not our bill, but the bill that we're sponsoring today. It's not been reintroduced, but it's in those materials. Just again, Google Citizens Climate Lobby. You'll read all about the bill. That's a good one. There might be other good pricing bills, but we just so much believe in the power of the economy to push this forward. And if you do one thing, that's what I suggest. Call those people and do it monthly. And say, hey, I'm from Bethel Lutheran in Northfield,
Well, and I will jump in and say, and if you do it through CCL, they'll give you a script. So if anyone is interested in those monthly calls, Janet Petrie is the new person. And that can be, and you can actually, well, no, I won't say this, but if you're timid about talking to a person, then call at night.
Oh, I was going to say the same thing. That's what I do. And I asked my congresspersons, the climate person, does it matter if we call in the day and talk to an intern and call at night and talk to the machine? She said, nope. So I call at night.
Yeah, they just write it down.
They write it down, but it's a call, and it's not, they won't say, but we've heard it's 10 times more valuable than a letter, and a letter's 10 times more valuable than an email, because emails you can generate just by going click. So
CCL always starts with a thank you. So if you call Angie Craig, you could say, thank you so much for your support. Yeah. And I hope you'll reach out to somebody across the aisle, because we really want, I'm also a CCL member. We want the
very good
bipartisan support.
Very good.
So Mary,
talk to Cynthia.
Yeah, or Cynthia, maybe you can send a link or something that we can put on the website.
For sure.
Okay, because we've got all the different classes listed, and that would be something we could put as a follow-up underneath this class.
Yeah.
Excellent. I always share my email after these, but I'm not gonna, because you can talk to Cynthia. You don't need to talk to me.
The other thing I want to mention really quickly while we have everybody still here is we're hoping to put this, we recorded this, we're hoping to put it up on the website under the description of this class. but I need to announce that you're being recorded. So that you know that, and if you have any hesitation about that, please email me, bfarmer@bethelnorthville.org. Otherwise, we're going to say everybody's fine with this going up. Fair enough?
Cynthia, have you played with the model, the En-ROADS model?
Only a very little bit.
Okay. Yeah, I've given many talks about climate, and as soon as I started doing the model, I noticed, at least in myself, a lot more hopeful outlook.
Yeah.
So I encourage you as a next step, anybody, get the model out, just open it up, Google En-ROADS, and you'll find it. It's free, it's open, and you can start sliding things.
Rod, I have a question. Have the mathematicians played with the model enough to know to actually find the optimal mix?
Oh, that's a great question. You basically do a Monte Carlo, do every possible slide on the model. I don't know that. That's a great.
I know there is a multiple variable solution to this where you would get the optimal mix.
Yeah.
But you're it's like the climate itself.
Yeah, it's kind of, yeah, the low, but yeah, then you decide what are you going to optimize. And let me say this, I didn't highlight it enough or at all, but this model, this solution is good for the communities that are most hurt by climate. And so this climate justice idea has been getting a lot of good press lately, and I'm so happy about that. You know, climate justice is the people that are harmed most by climate choices should be helped by our climate solution. Those are people, you know, in the presence of pollution due to energy use, coal burning, etc. People that will be negatively impacted if we put a price on carbon. So this is an important aspect that CCL is involved in. And this model too, they have a whole section where it says, what will this mean for communities, climate communities or communities under stress from climate, which are usually low income and communities of color. And so those also are being factored in. So back to your point, Eddie, what do you optimize? You know, do you optimize Joel's stock portfolio, or do you optimize communities of color, or do you optimize?
It's one of those that there's no right answer.
Right, but you definitely got to do some work. And
we got to look at the cause and effect of it, and
yeah,
carry it out for that toxicity, and you know, just tremendous. But it's like the weather; it's as complicated as the weather.
But in a little way too, every senator and House member is asking the same thing. What do you optimize? Do you optimize jobs in my district? Well, some do. Do you optimize overall U.S. economy and the taxation rate? Some do. You know, so what do you want to optimize? We're just saying get that thing to 2, and the best way is to keep carbon in the ground. That's what we're working on.
Let me put a plug in for Amy Klobuchar. One of her aides is a Northfield gentleman, Ian Iverson. So if you write to Amy Klobuchar, you'll probably get a response from a Northfield student. And
cool.
Ian Iverson.
Do you know what his specialty is within that office?
I don't. I haven't talked with Ian for, well, we can't have church, so I haven't seen Ian for months.
Oh. See if he call him and see what he's thinking about the climate.
Yeah.
Yeah, good timing.
Okay. Thank you, Rod. This has been so informative. And I think, as Mary said, it's going to give the Creation Care team some information to move forward. And so we are greatly appreciative of your time and all your information.
You're very welcome. And I'm happy to spend time with you. I told Barb earlier, the only problem with Zoom is there's no coffee and cookies now.
There isn't my house, but you're not all invited.
Yeah, but you don't want me there.
Thank you so much. It was very informative.
No, I'm serious. If you do want to contact me, don't hesitate. I'll put it in the chat. Barb's got my email, because I do love talking about this stuff. And you've had some good questions too.
So Rod, can we get this model, get our hands on this model? Is it publicly available or
right now? Yes, all you have to do is Google En-ROADS, which I'm, just Google it. It'll just pop right up, and then you open it up. They call it the beta version because they're always improving it, but it's the same model I had for you. It'll run on any laptop.
Great.
Yeah, it's fun to use.
Play chess with it.
Do that. Optimize. All right. Well, great to see you all.
Rod, are you okay with putting your email address on the website?
That's okay. Oh, on your website.
I know. You want that?
No, because no, sometimes people.
Right.
The marketers are good at scrubbing those for all kinds of junk.
Yep, I get it.
Yeah, thank you. Well, unless you put, how clever they are, rfisher06 ampersand, you write ampersand in parentheses. You ever seen that trick? Then you write dot in parentheses so it can't be scrubbed by a robot.
Yeah.
That's not a bad idea. All right.
Okay, thank you very much.
Good to see you all.
Thank you so much. It was excellent.
Have a good Sunday. Stay warm.
Too.
Bye-bye.
We bought an electric car. You wonder if it's going to change it too.
Well, that was great. Oh my God.
You and Mary, there you go.
Mary,
Barb,
that was so much, that was even better than I could have ever expected.
We need to let you go, Barb, but Connie, we should not have canceled. Okay, Barb's hard too. We should not have
canceled. Oh, you mean Angie? We haven't canceled it. I have not contacted her yet.
Okay, so Barb,
I think we should stick with it.
Yeah, I did tell Barb that we didn't need that extra 15 minutes, but
no, I think we still need it. Yeah.
Barb,
I think we needed it anyway, given today.
Yeah.
I mean, and then we'll want to rush out though, because that's the day of the RIC celebration too, but it goes until 11. So if we finish at 10:45, Mary, and we have to drive and we're not far away, we can hop in our cars and get over there.
Yeah. But Barb, if you would reconsider, I'm going to send a message out to our group, because in fact, that was so we could prepare to talk to Angie Craig, and really he's telling us that's the most important thing we can do.
Yeah, exactly.
And that was the 14th, right?
Yeah.
14th, right? Yeah.
Nope.
So thank you, Barb.
No. I told her the 28th.
It's the 28th. Oh yeah, it's the 28th. What's wrong?
So then it won't be. I was gonna say, I didn't think it was the.
No, next week is the 14th, and we'll have, and that could go over a little bit. But you're right, I got mixed up. So sorry. Yeah. But my line 3 question, I didn't have my facts all straight, but I still don't care because it was nice to hear what he had to say. Yeah. So out of the recording, I could probably like to scrub about methane because I got confused on my carbon, but it doesn't matter.
And Barb, I'm going to let you go because I just know we've so run over, but you just cut off the conversation between the 3 of us?
Oh yeah, we always cut off like the beginning of the time too.
Okay, thank you.
Cut off this. Yeah. It'll just be what his presentation and the questions after.
Wonderful.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay,
I think we're back on for the 28th, and then Connie, I'm going to send a message out to the team this afternoon regarding that.
Yeah, I'm glad that came up today. And I mean, there are several things that came up. I mean, he set us up really well for the rest of the whole thing. He set us up beautifully. He set us up for climate justice. He set us up for electric cars. he set us up for, the Northfield climate plan with moving toward electricity. I mean, he was a great umbrella, so it makes me feel like that's where we should be more active, is in citizens climate lobby rather than some other things.
Okay.
We have some choices. Barb, you're going to soon be able to make some choices.
What's that?
Retire. You'll soon be able to make some of those choices when you retire.
True.
I still
Thank
feel
you.
like we need to let you go. So thank you.
Bye. Yeah. Bye-bye.
All right. Thank you.